Hello everyone, today we're going to look at evaluating area and perimeter of some common shapes. So the first one is a parallelogram. So a parallelogram is where you have two sets of parallel sides. So these bases, which we're going to call B, are parallel, and the other two sides, which we'll call A, are also parallel. The perimeter is 2A plus B, and the area is BH. So again, these two guys are B, these are A, and then H is the height. The height is the perpendicular height of our parallelogram, so it creates a right triangle with the base. Okay. Our next shape is a rectangle. Its perimeter is 2L plus 2W, and its area is LW. So before I go any further, hopefully you can remember that perimeter is the distance around an object, and the area is the amount of surface of an object. Right? So as I go around my rectangle, I'm hitting length twice and width twice. So 2L plus 2W. It's the same thing as a parallelogram. A rectangle is a specific type of parallelogram, which is why their formulas are very, very similar. Another shape we have is a square. So the distance around is S plus S plus S plus S, which is 4S, and the area S squared. That is why it's actually called squared, because it's the area of a square. It's not a coincidence. A square is a type of rectangle, so its equations are very similar to that of a rectangle. The next one is a rhombus. It is a type of parallelogram where the sides are all the same. So the side here is S. Whoops, not 4. I don't know why I put 4. S. Okay, so its perimeter is 4S, and a square is also a type of rhombus. And then the area is 1/2 A times B. So A and B are the lengths of the diagonals of the rhombus. So I multiply them together, and then I divide it by 2. Next we have a circle. So the perimeter of a circle is really called the circumference. So this is really a C for, equals, that's terrible. Equals C for circumference. So that is 2 pi r. So r is the radius, which is the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the perimeter of the circle. And then the area is pi r squared, so pi times the radius squared. Next we have a triangle. So we have down here the horizontal side of the triangle we call B for the base. And again, the H is that height that's perpendicular to the base. The other two sides we'll call A and C. So the perimeter, the distance around the triangle, is A plus B plus C. And the area is 1/2 B times H. So you got to make sure that you're looking at the two parts that are perpendicular to each other. And then lastly is a trapezoid. So the distance around the trapezoid is just going around those 4 sides, A plus B plus C plus D. So a trapezoid is a generalized version of a parallelogram. A trapezoid has to have one set of parallel sides. Those parallel sides, in this case, are A and B. And so these guys are parallel. And then the distance between them is H. And again, it's perpendicular to A and B, which are both parallel. Okay, so for the area, it's 1/2 times H times A plus B, where again, A and B are the parallel sides. Okay. So let's do some examples. Find the perimeter and volume of the following shapes. So the first guy we have is this, and the first thing we want to do is figure out what shape it is. hopefully we can agree it's a rectangle. So we'll look at the formula for perimeter and area of a rectangle. And the perimeter is twice the length plus twice the width. Whichever one you want to call the length or the width doesn't really matter. But it's going to be 4 plus 6, which is 10. And if I added in units, say I called these meters, then the perimeter would also be in meters. It's still a distance. The area for a rectangle is length times width, so 2 times 3, which will give us 6. And again, if I had meters here, then the area would be 6 meters squared. So it's 2 meters times 3 meters, which is 6 meters squared. Right? You have to have 2 dimensions for area. So let's try another one. This object, we can hopefully agree, is a circle. And again, the perimeter is called the circumference. And that is 2 pi times r, and r is labeled as 4. So it's 8 pi. So here, where you're not allowed a calculator, you can leave it as 8 pi, or you could multiply it by 3.14 if you wanted to get a little closer to it. But if I actually do out 8 times pi, I get 25.13. The area is pi r squared, so pi times 4 squared. And again, I can leave that as 16 pi. And again, if you wanted to guesstimate it, you could multiply it by 3.14 since you're not allowed a calculator. If I do put this into my calculator and I use the whole pi, I'm getting 50.27 rounded. Hopefully we can tell that this is in fact a triangle. So the perimeter is the distance around, so 18 plus 25 plus 30, and that gives us 73. The area is 1/2 times the base times the height. So again, here we have our right angle, so my base is 30, my height is 15. If I multiply that through, I'll have 225. And again, if I gave these units, say inches, then the perimeter would also be inches, but the area would be inches squared. Okay, so if the shapes have units, make sure to include units in your answer. Next, we have a rhombus. We can tell it's a rhombus because it's giving us the diagonals, and this is the only shape where we need the diagonals. So the perimeter is the distance around, which again is 4 times 5, because in a rhombus each side is the same, and in this case it's 5. So we have 20. The area is 1/2 times the product of our diagonals. Our diagonals are 7 and 6. So if I take 1/2 times 6 times 7, I get 21. And then lastly, this is a trapezoid. It is kind of sideways from the picture that we saw earlier. But for the perimeter, that's not going to matter. It's just the distance around. So 5 plus 10 plus 4 plus 7. That gives us 26. And now the area. So again, for the trapezoid, we need the 2 sides that are parallel. And that is these 2 guys right here. So our A and B are 7 and 10. And then the distance between them, our height, is actually a side of our trapezoid. And that's 4. So we have 1/2 the height, which is 4, and then the addition of the 2 sides that are parallel. And that will give us 34. Okay, so make sure you go through them, make sure you can identify which shape is which. The formulas will be on the test. You don't have to have the formulas memorized, but you do have to be able to tell what shape it is. Okay, so read through the book, try out the homework, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.